Welcome to the Immigrant Entrepreneurs Podcast, episode 65. My name is Alina Warwick, and today we have Yasir Shirazi on the show. But before we continue with this episode, I wanted to ask if you can share some love by subscribing to the podcast and leaving a rating. If you leave a rating, your name may be dropped in one of my future episodes. So stay tuned and connected.
So suddenly the news website went from having 100 visitors a day to 100,000 visitors a day. Suddenly 200,000 visitors a day, suddenly 300,000 visitors a day. And at that time, we were like, okay, we're up to something over here. So then when I was in Germany, I started spending a lot of time on it in terms of how to get more traffic, how to build a brand around it.
Yasir came to the States to study on an M.B.A. program at 27 years old from Pakistan. His struggles were just as many other immigrants. Without any credit score or bank accounts, he wasn't even able to buy a car. He realized that his driver's license from Pakistan is invalid in the States, and he had to learn everything from scratch. After graduating from college, he left to Germany for a period of time, but he realized that America is still the greatest country to start any business. So after launching 2 businesses, he launched InstaKin, which has an amazing business model. He started InstaKin only because he kept on running into problems while being in Germany and in the States that had to do with taking care of regular business back home. After doing some research, he found that a lot of other immigrants were having the same issues. Everything was taking forever to do, from sending money to family members, from obtaining documents, to legal business affairs, to immigration services, and much, much more. That's how InstaKin was launched. They can take care of practically everything overseas using their services. So let's dive right in and hear all about Yasir's journey. Yasir, thank you so much for coming on the Immigrant Entrepreneurs Podcast. I truly appreciate your time, and I'm super, super excited to hear all about your journey. So welcome to the show.
Thank you, Alina. I'm very happy to be on this show with you.
So let's dive right in. Let's talk about your immigrant journey. Tell us where you're from and when did you come to the United States?
Yeah, so I'm originally from Pakistan, born and raised in Pakistan, went to college in Pakistan in the city of Karachi. My dad used to work for the government, so we traveled around a lot. So that gave me an opportunity to basically visit and live in a lot of different cities in the country. And I was there till 2006 when I decided to move to the US. At that time, I used to work for a European oil marketing company, but I just decided to pack up and come to the US because I thought I have some milestones and targets to achieve, and the US would be the place from where I should get started.
Okay, and how old were you?
I was 27 at that time.
Okay, 27. And did you just come just to move or did you come to go to school? Did you have any family or friends out here?
Yeah, so I came here to go to school in Boston. I came here at Babson College. Frankly, I had no family here. I had a distant cousin in New York, but that's pretty much it. Other than that, I had some more relatives in New Jersey, in California, but literally when I came here, I just came on my own.
Wow. Okay. So we're going to get back to that, but I do want to ask you, what was it like growing up in Pakistan?
Pakistan is a pretty cool place, actually. I think it gets a lot of bad press at times,
Hmm.
but I think like any other country, they have their issues too over there. I would say it's like, I mean, the US is an amazing place where you have issues over here too around gun control,
Exactly.
around healthcare, so around immigration. So I think every country has its fair share of problems.
Hmm.
And maybe Pakistan has a little bit more than its fair share. But overall, when I was growing up over there, it was a very peaceful place. We never had any issues. I think the issues started from 2000, the year 2000 onwards. Before that, it was actually a nice place. And like I said, I've traveled a lot. I still am in touch with a lot of people back home. I go back a lot. My parents are still there. So even in those cities, I'll tell you, if anyone that I know who's not from Pakistan and has visited Pakistan, they only say good things about their experience over there. And I had the same thing. I went to school there. I went to college there, interacted with a lot of people. So even from my perspective, I get this question a lot actually. So I always say that it's actually a very nice place to visit. You just don't have to go to the wrong part of the city. Just like in Boston or in New York or anywhere
Mm-hmm.
else, there are parts that you don't want to go at 2 a.m. In
Mm-hmm.
the same way, there are parts of Pakistan that you don't want to go to at 2 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, the big cities are pretty safe, and it's a nice place to be in.
And you said your dad worked for the government?
Yeah, so my dad used to work for the government in Pakistan. He would move around a lot for his job, so we would just move around with him. Now he has his own law practice, but earlier he used to work for the government in Pakistan.
Okay, got it. And what about your mom?
Yeah, so my mom actually, she did a master's degree in Pakistan when I think very few women would even go to university in Pakistan. This
Really?
was in the 1970s.
Why is that?
So I think it has to do with the culture at that time. It was
Okay.
not very common for women to study, to go to college or go to university for that matter. Now things have changed a lot from that perspective. So
Mm-hmm.
now it's very common. Women would go to college, to university, go for their PhD. Actually, my wife is finishing up her PhD.
Mm-hmm.
So things have changed a lot from that perspective. But my mom, she finished up, she did a master's in economics.
Was she the only woman in college?
So that's what I've heard. Maybe she was one of the two in her class,
Wow.
2 or 3 in her class. So yeah, it was not very common at that time. So my grandfather, I think he was a big proponent that everyone should study. So she went all the way. And now it's the norm over there. It's very common for,
Mm-hmm.
for women to study all the way.
Got it. Okay. And so she got her master's, you said in econ?
Yeah, so she did her master's in econ, and then afterwards she decided to take care of us. There were 4 of us,
Okay.
her kids. So she's the one actually why we got good grades in school. Totally focused on us.
Oh, that's awesome. And what is the education system like in Pakistan? Does the government pay for college?
So it depends where you go to
Okay.
school, but generally the system is very similar to the British system at the college level. You usually have a 3-year degree or a 4-year degree at this point. But there are government universities where you can study for little to no fees, but there are private schools where you have to pay. So the
Mm.
government in Pakistan, I think that's one of the areas where they lag. They don't spend enough on education.
So at least there's still an option for people to go get a college degree without taking out 50, 60, a hundred
Oh
thousand
yeah.
dollar loans like here in America.
Look, look. I've lived in Germany. I've spent a lot of time in the UK. This is a purely American phenomenon.
Yeah.
$300,000 in loans. That doesn't happen anywhere in the world. Not even in Pakistan. I mean, in Pakistan, if you go to a very expensive school, university, I mean, maybe you'll end up with $10,000 in debt. That's
Mm-hmm.
it.
Mm-hmm.
That's like the upper limit. When I was living in Germany, it's free. Education is free there at the university level. So I think this is more of an American phenomena of having a lot of debt
Mm-hmm.
while studying. Most places, it's not the case.
Yeah, that's really, and I'm really excited to hear about other countries and how they run their education system. And like you said, America lives on educational debt and it's completely normal. But when you look at other countries, it's not as normal. And even if you do have debt, it's not, tons and thousands and hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt. But Yasser, I wanted to ask, growing up in Pakistan, did you know that you were going to end up living in United States?
So yes and no.
Okay.
Growing up, I mean, I knew I wanted to study more, go somewhere else, but it's not as if I didn't plan it when I was 12 that, okay, I'm going to be in the US at the age of 26. But yeah, I did know that I would like to study more. I would like to experience different cultures. So from that perspective, I had some idea.
Hmm.
But of course, once I finished college over there, then it became more specific in terms of milestones. Okay, when should I go? What is the timeline? How much work experience do I need beforehand? So at that point, it got more specific.
Got it. So you came to America at 26 years old and you came to Boston, right?
Right.
Okay. So what did you study in Boston?
Yeah. So in Boston, I came to Babson College. I finished up my MBA over here. Mostly I've studied business and economics throughout my educational journey. So I stayed in Boston. Then I actually moved to New York for a few months. Then I decided to move back to Boston for a job over here. I started working with a German company in Boston. And then they actually took me to Germany in 2013 for 3 years. I spent some time over there as well. It's more of a professional learning institute by the name of Siemens Academy
Mm-hmm.
in Berlin. So I spent some time over there. But overall, the reason for coming to Boston was to study. And then afterwards, I just moved around abroad. When I was in the US, I mostly stayed in Boston.
Okay, so at 26 years old, you came without any family, friends. What were some of the struggles that you experienced as an immigrant in Boston, in America, in a brand new country?
So I had been to the US before, just once. I think it's not about the US. Any new place that you go to as a migrant, it has its sets of challenges. The challenges can be in terms of culture, social norms. There are a lot of things that you have to get used to. So I think that was pretty normal. I knew this was coming. It requires some adjustment. So in terms of challenges, I mean, first of all, you're suddenly away from home all on your own. So
Hmm.
you have to basically figure out everything yourself. So you have to get in hustle mode. And I think that's one of the things that you'll see with most migrants is that they leave everything behind one way or the other, voluntarily or involuntarily. And when they come to a new place, they basically start off fresh.
Hmm.
So which means that they have to learn new things. They have to get used to new things. They have to get used to new environments, new people, a new social norm. So I had the same challenges. I mean, when I came here, I know I landed in New York when I came here in 2006, and a cousin of mine picked me up, and I stayed with him for 2 days, and he was very helpful to me. But after that, I just came here to Boston, and then I was on my own. And I always say this, that this is a journey that you have to go through. There are no positives, only you have to go through some challenges too, which are usually in terms of getting used to a new place and a new environment. And the challenge can be as something as small as, okay, how am I going to open a bank account over here?
Yeah.
Or how am I going to get a credit card? It's a lot easier now. In 2007, 8, it was actually harder to even open a bank account.
How did you figure all that out?
Oh, so what I did was I found a sponsor. I found someone who took me to the bank, and they had an account over there too. So they gave me like some type of a reference. So it all worked out. The credit card thing, it took me a year to figure it out because no one would give me a credit card. And even when I had cash in bank, they would still tell me that, oh, you don't qualify for this card. And then that's when I realized, okay, you need to have like a very solid credit score in the US to get these things. So this is like a very small example of things that you have to face, which you sometimes take for granted
Hmm.
when you're back home. And here, this is one thing is, okay, you have to suddenly buy a car yourself. You go to buy a car and you realize it's a little bit more complicated here than it was in Pakistan. You need insurance immediately. You have to get registered immediately. So small things that come up, you suddenly realize that your Pakistani driving license doesn't work in the US. And you realize it after driving the car for 5 days. And then you're like, okay, so we need to get a driving license. The challenges are always of all forms and nature. These challenges are more everyday challenges. The more, I would say, strategic challenges are around survival. They're around, okay, so I'm here. What do I need to do next? What do I need to plan next? How do I build my own ecosystem over here? How do I build a network of people that I can be with?
Hmm.
So I think those are more strategic challenges that every migrant goes through. Credit card, bank account, these are easy. They're very quickly, you can solve them. But I think it's the strategic challenges that take a lot of effort and a lot of grinding that a migrant has to go through to figure out. I mean, I know people who came to this country, they didn't even have a cousin to pick them up at the airport or a relative, and they did everything on their own. And you listen to their story and you realize how similar challenges are for migrants, irrespective of which country you're coming from,
Hmm.
irrespective of what type of background you're coming from. Because one thing about America is that once you come here, literally everyone starts from scratch. So you all have to build up based on a foundation. So I had the same challenges. I mean, there were some other things too, but I think the biggest thing was getting used to the new environment. very quickly, and at the same time also plan what you want to do in the future after you finish school. Where do you want to work? What type of job do you want? Do you want a job, or do you want to do something else? So these are all the decisions that would come to mind at that time, which seemed like very big challenges at that time.
Yeah, I totally get it. And so tell me, you graduated from Boston. Did you say you went to Germany right after that and then you came back, or what was the journey like?
I stayed in Boston for 5 years,
Okay.
and then I moved to Germany in 2008, 2013. And then I stayed there for 3 years. I stayed for about a year in Berlin and for 2 years in Munich. And that was a very interesting experience as well. Actually, Germany is a very different culture from the US. I think they're way more organized than we are over here. They're way more structured. But
That's
I
good to
really
hear.
liked it over there because I feel that the people that I interacted with, at least they were very authentic over there.
Mhm.
So I really liked living over there the 3 years. I think that was a great experience. But then in mid 2016, I said to myself, let's move back to the US, because at that time I had already started my own ventures, my own startups on the side. So I was like, the best place to build these businesses is actually from the US. And so I decided to move back to the US in 2016.
Okay, so when you graduated with the MBA, you never got a job. You went to Germany and you started your businesses out there.
Oh, no. After graduating, I got a job with Siemens, which is a German company. I worked with
Oh, got
them
it.
in the US for 5 years. And then with Siemens, I went to Germany to their German office for 3 years. And then I moved back in 2016 to the US.
Okay.
I've done a lot of back and forth moving, so it confuses a lot of people.
So what were the side hustles that you started in Germany?
Actually, before I went to Germany in 2011-12, I was like, okay, let's try to figure out what we can do online. Because I once started a business in 2005-6 around software development in Pakistan, but then I suddenly realized that it's almost impossible to find developers, and
Yeah.
there is very little demand in the local market.
Hmm.
And now things have changed. So I said to myself, let's see what we can do with digital. I decided to try out a couple of things around e-commerce, around affiliate marketing. These are all very common marketing related
Hmm.
activities. So we decided to see if we could sell online. We decided to see if we can become affiliate marketers. And that went pretty well. And at that point, I said that, okay, I'm doing all this over here. I should also try something else. So I built a website for social news in Pakistan,
For social what?
basically for news.
News. Okay. Hmm.
Yes, it's a news website that focuses on social topics. It's not a news website which is more traditional and focuses on, let's say, everyday politics or current affairs. It focuses more on social topics. So I decided to build that website before I went to Germany. It took a while to get it started, but then once it got started, it just took off. So that was the first venture that I did, that I spent a lot of time.
And how old were you?
I was 35.
Okay.
So that's the first one that I started. And then the beauty of internet is that if you do it right, if you put in the hours, if you come up with an idea that people can resonate with, you see traction.
Hmm.
So suddenly the news website went from having 100 visitors a day to 100,000 visitors a day to
Wow.
suddenly 200,000 visitors a day, suddenly 300,000 visitors a day. And at that time, we were like, okay, we're up to something over here. So then when I was in Germany, I started spending a lot of time on it in terms of how to get more traffic, how to build a brand around it. It's very interesting that when I interview people now for my latest startup, a lot of them, they come to me and they tell me that, oh, so you're the founder of that news website. We really like what you guys do over there. And that's why we decided to interview with you over here, because we wanted to see what you're doing.
Are you still running that?
So I'm not actively involved with it at this point, but it's
Okay.
a running business at that point. It has its own team. They manage stuff on their own. But yeah, I mean, I do look at it sometimes because it's nice to see something that you've spent so much time on, like evolving into something that's meaningful.
Yeah.
So I think from that perspective, it's very impactful, because in terms of this news website, we've had so much positive feedback from people. There are so many stories where we helped out people with our website. So I still remember once this person contacted us saying that, oh, my someone in their family was very sick and they could not afford treatment. So we actually started writing about it. The guy was able to raise all the funds within 3 days. And then we suddenly realized that we can help a lot of people this way. I think actually just a few months back, there was another incident where there was this kid who needed treatment and he could not afford it in Pakistan. And they contacted us and we wrote about that kid. And I think he raised like $9,000 within 1 week from
Wow.
from people who basically read what they saw on our website.
That's so awesome.
They could relate to it. So I think that was a very meaningful experience. And the hours that I put in Germany after my work hours, they turned out to be to represent something very meaningful.
Awesome. That's so awesome. And I love that you were running a business that really impacts in a positive way to the communities that you serve. So, what happened after that? You started another company?
So when I started this news website, I said to myself, let's do something else too. So I decided to build a digital PR platform with some other people, and that went pretty well too. We actually recently licensed it out a very large not-for-profit corporation, and they use our software services essentially to fight fake news in South Asia.
Hmm.
So that was also very meaningful. We like to do things that have purpose and meaning. So this was also very relevant because there is a lot of fake news out there around health related topics. I mean, with COVID, it's even more
Yeah.
prevalent.
Yeah.
So we're happy that we're contributing in some way to stop this and create a better ecosystem for everyone. So that was the second venture. I licensed that out 2 years back, but it's still running. It's still doing well.
Is that social CXN?
Yes.
Okay.
So that's a CXN. We took CXN as a short form for connection. We thought connections would be so long, so we just
Yeah.
made it CXN. So every time people ask us, what is CXN? We then tell them it's just a short form for connection.
Hmm.
So that was the second one. And then after that, I said to myself that, okay, I've been living abroad for so long and there are challenges that I have. Maybe I can build a business around it. So that's how I ended up with InstaKin.
Hmm. Okay. And tell us the story about InstaKin.
With InstaKin, it's something very personal, I would say, as a migrant who's been living abroad for so long. And as a first generation migrants tend to have a very close bond with their home countries, their native countries. It's just the nature of things because you have family over there. You still have some responsibilities over there. I realized that every time I need to get something done back home in Pakistan, it's very stressful. I have to rely on people. Let's say I still remember when I was moving to Germany, I needed some documents from back home and something that should have taken me 3 days or 4 days took me more than a month.
Hmm.
And I said to myself, why is it so complicated? And then I started talking to other migrants from India, from Bangladesh, Uganda, Kenya, Nigeria, Egypt, Mexico, Brazil, Philippines, Cambodia. I was so surprised at the answers that were coming in. Every migrant that I would talk to and I would ask them, okay, so you send a lot of money back home. Is it easy for you to get things done back home, like pay your bills, or let's say if you need a home renovation, or you just need something as simple as getting something moved from point A to point B? And I was so surprised. The response was so consistent that, oh, it's a horrible experience, first
Hmm.
of all.
Hmm.
Secondly, we know we lose money. If I send $2,000 back for something, even if it costs $1,000, I'm never getting the other 1,000 back. It's just gone.
Hmm.
And I said to myself, that's so funny because that's the experience that I've had over the last 12 years. I'm always dependent on someone to do things for me. So I said, what if we build a service for migrants where they can directly connect with businesses and vendors in their home countries? And we provide the assurance that the vendors and businesses have been vetted. And the migrant would know that they can collaborate with the vendor, they can talk to them through our product, they can make payments through our escrow. They can have contracts through our product. And so the migrant would have this assurance that there will be no fraud. There will be no inflated bills. They will not be dependent on a busy cousin or an uncle or a relative. They would just be more empowered in terms of managing their own stuff. I would consider myself to be a white collar worker.
Hmm.
This problem is even more prevalent with blue collar workers.
Mm.
I'll tell you, we came across this one person from the Philippines who was working in the Middle East, and she told us how she would send money back home every month to, I think it was her brother's bank account.
Mm-hmm.
And the brother was supposed to take care of her kids, pay for their school fees, pay for the house where they were staying with their grandparents, essentially buy groceries for them, do everything. 6 months down the line, she learned that the brother just took all the money and invested in his own business.
Oh my
So
goodness.
she had to leave her job, fly back to the Philippines to
Wow.
figure out what happened. And this is not a one off. We've come across at this point so many similar stories from migrants in Singapore, because there are a lot of migrants from the Philippines, from Cambodia, Myanmar, Vietnam, Pakistan, India, Bangladesh working in Singapore. And they all have the same story. Blue collar workers saving a lot of money, sending it back to a relative, hoping that they would take care of business for them, pay the bills. And it's very common, fraud happens. And if the relative or the cousin or uncle is not committing the fraud, the vendors come in and they know that the migrant is so far away from home,
Mm-hmm.
and that the opportunity cost of going back is so high that the service levels are so poor. So I said to myself, okay, how about we build a solution where we can connect migrants directly with vendors in their home country. They can work directly with them. They can talk to them on the phone. They can manage all the payments through our product. There will be an escrow. There will be contracts. So everything will be documented. All the vendors coming on the platform, we will verify them first. We set up an automated process at this point for this verification. What this would do for the migrants, they would be empowered to manage their own remittance funds. Number one. Number two, they would know what the prices are, what the cost is. There will be no he said, she said afterwards, where the vendor would first say, oh, this is going to cost you $2,000. And then after 2 days, after receiving $2,000, he's going to ask for another $2,000. So that's not going to happen. So we're trying to bring this trust factor between migrants and their home countries in terms of how remittances are spent. What we're doing is very different from a typical remittance. And we see a lot of value in it already. I mean, people come to us, contact us and tell us that there's this one guy in Singapore who I personally spoke to, and he told me that he was trying to get this task accomplished back home in Pakistan for the last 6 months. And he was always calling up people and no one was doing it. And we just got it done for him in 2 weeks. So there's real value in the service that we are providing, not just from a commercial perspective, but also from a social impact perspective. I mean, it's incredible the types of requests that we get, and we're just getting started. I mean, people come to us asking for us to arrange home care for their parents back home. We started off just focusing on Pakistani migrants, and suddenly migrants from India and Bangladesh were contacting us saying, hey, do you provide this service in India too? Do you provide this service in Bangladesh too? And we realized that the pain points are so similar that it doesn't matter where you're from. Chances are you will have the same problem if you're a migrant and you live away from home. There's a very good study by Sentry, a research group, which says that 70% of migrants would prefer to pay a business vendor back home directly versus sending a remittance to an uncle or a cousin and ask them to make the payments on their behalf.
Yeah.
And there's a very simple reason for that. A lot of times, unfortunately, funds are misused, funds are reallocated, and that adds a lot of stress in a migrant's life.
So, Yasir, before InstaKin, from what I'm hearing is a lot of migrants would go to, say, one company to transfer funds overseas, and then to another company to send flowers, or to another company to do something else. But InstaKin, from what I'm hearing, is it captures all of the services, even planning a wedding, into one company that allows all of these immigrants to come like a one-stop shop to handle all of their overseas businesses.
Yes, so that's the vision, that's the North Star.
Okay.
Creating a solution which is a one-stop shop solution for migrants, where they can come in, they can make all the payments to vendors in their home countries directly through us, instead of sending a remittance through, let's say, Western Union to a cousin or an uncle, and then expecting them to do it for you.
Right.
We want the migrant to control the payments directly.
That's awesome. And I love that idea because I know my mom, she would always have issues and trouble, finding someone back in Russia to go pick up money from, how Western Union would transfer the funds. And there's so many fees and all kinds of different payments that she would have to make. And then she'd have to call back home to get, her cousin or her brother to, pick up the money and deliver it to this person. So I totally can resonate with that. And I love the mission behind your company. So, how many countries are you guys in now?
So right now we're focusing from a supply side. We only focus on Pakistan,
Okay.
but now we're building our network across India and Bangladesh too.
Hmm.
So those are the two countries that we want to focus on. And that's essentially because if you look at the migrant community, you'll find the South Asian migrant community living in the same hubs. They're either in Saudi Arabia or the UAE, in specific states in the US, in specific cities in Canada, in specific parts of the UK. So it's easier for us to essentially get in front of them and provide them with a service which would be relevant for them. But like I said, eventually, I mean, we already have a roadmap. We want to take this service to every country from where people have moved abroad.
Yes, worldwide. Absolutely. I know you're going to get there, Yasser. I love it. I love the big goals and the big dreams. So I wanted to touch on a thing that you mentioned, which was you saw a constant problem and you saw that there was a need, but there was no solution. And what I want to bring out to all the immigrants that are listening is, hey, if there is absolutely no solution or the solution that you have found is not appealing to everyone else, but you have that key to unlock and to open something up. What you did, Yasser, was you took a stand and you went full force and you said, you know what, I'm going to open up this company and I'm going to provide these solutions. Whereas a lot of people can sit on something and say, well, there's no solution and that's it. That's all they do. They do absolutely nothing. And I love the fact that you had a couple of different startups previously, but you were still being creative and you were still opening up your creative mind to open up another business venture to help and assist the migrants that were having the same issues that you eventually had. So I absolutely love that. Just wanted to bring that up.
Thank you very much. Like I said, this is in some ways very personal for our entire team because we've lived through this problem and it sometimes surprises us why there is no, let's say, a big solution around this big problem. But I think that's the nature of the money transfer business. If you look at the money transfer business, 12 years back, it was even very hard to send money back home to any country. It was just
Mhm.
remittances were tough. Now it's very easy. We believe that this is a natural evolution of the money transfer business where you're not sending cash back home anymore. You're just sending payments back home now.
Yeah. So, Yasser, how long did it take for InstaKin to start seeing some real traction in the beginning stages?
It's a great question, actually. I'm a big proponent of testing out a solution
Okay.
before going ahead and building products around it. So the way I started InstaKin was literally, I knew that a lot of migrants use WhatsApp and they're all on WhatsApp talking to their families back home.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of WhatsApp groups where they talk to each other. I literally sent a message to a couple of these WhatsApp groups where I knew there were a lot of migrants. And I said, hey, I've been having this problem. I'm starting this service. Would anyone be interested? If you need something done back home, if you need a service provider, a vendor for any specific task, let me know and I can see what I can do. So I sent this message at about 10 or 11. I think it was 10 or 11 p.m. Eastern time. I went to bed. And next day, I think I had more than 500 messages from different people.
Wow.
And they were like, oh, yeah, can you provide this service back home? Or can you provide this other service back home? And suddenly I said to myself, okay, so this shows to me that there is demand for this solution, but I don't know yet if people are willing to pay for it. Because many times people want something, but they're just not willing to pay for it yet.
Hmm.
So I quickly deployed a team to manage supply side in Pakistan. I just started taking orders. For me, the biggest validation was when someone was willing to pay me for a service. And it also made me realize that things are maybe not good for these people because they don't have access back home. So what I'm doing can be very meaningful for them. So in terms of what we did, we saw traction within the first 3 weeks, 4 weeks, but then we started to test out different concepts. We decided to test out different services for a couple of weeks. But very quickly, we figured out that, hey, this can work. So we saw traction immediately in terms of demand. We saw traction immediately in terms of people willing to pay for the service. And most importantly, people coming to us and telling us that how this has been much needed. I think that was the biggest validation of all validations when people contact me and say that this makes total sense.
I love that. So, did you have to raise any capital to start any of your businesses?
The first startups were all self-funded.
Okay.
So we bootstrapped. With
Okay.
InstaKin, yes, we've raised money both from institutional investors and from private investors.
Okay, so let's talk about mentors. Did you have any mentors that helped you out to start any of your business ventures?
Oh, absolutely. Actually, I've had too many of them. I try to build a network of people that I believe understand problems and can have the ability to come up with solutions, and people who have the experience to share it with me. I think I've been very fortunate to come across people who have been kind enough to give me their time and share their experiences and also their networks. I mean, if I think about it, the mentors, advisors I've had, even today, I stay in touch with people in at least four different countries in the US, in Canada, in Germany. And there's a guy in Japan that I try to talk to frequently because he's a very smart guy. So I think with what I've done is that I built a network of mentors and advisors around myself because I believe that experience counts. If you can get good insights from someone, you should always go ahead and listen. Listening is part of the job that we have.
And where did you find these mentors?
So most of them were actually when I was working in my corporate job. So it just so happens that since I spent a lot of time in my corporate job, I spent more than 8 years. So I had a lot of interaction with different people over there. In the startup world, yes, now also I've built a group of people around me who I ask for advice and opinions. I do believe as an entrepreneur, you should get advice and have people share their experiences with you. But at the end of the day, you have to make your own decisions. So that's what I try to do. But yeah, definitely in most of the people that I reach out to, they are from the corporate world that I was in touch with. But very recently now, I've also built a network of people who have a lot of startup experience around it.
And I wanted to ask Yasser, when you were at the corporate jobs, and what was that journey like for you? Did you always know that you wanted to start your own business? And was it something like, it was hard work or too many hours, or what was that kind of journey like for you? Did you always know in the back of your head that I'm just here for a temporary amount of time? Or was it something like an eye opening experience and you said, I'm going to start whatever I figure something out and I'm going to start my own business? What was that like for you?
So I think I always wanted to start something
Okay.
on my own. So even when I had the corporate job, I was always looking around, even within the organization, trying to come up with different ways of solving problems. And I noticed that even at that time, that the biggest challenges with large companies is that they get very slow. At times, they don't think outside the box like they should be. So I felt that I can contribute a lot from that perspective. But I I will say when I was working in Germany, I was easily working, if not more, 10 hours a day with my regular job. But still, I was motivated enough to start something in my in my evenings and in my free hours.
And so, what about marketing? Do you do any Facebook ads, Google ads, any type of marketing to get InstaKin out there for you to be known out there? What type of marketing do you guys use?
So with InstaKin, what I believe is that this is a network driven business in the sense that if you look at typical startups in the US, I think there is some very good research out there that they allocate up to 40% of their budgets towards advertising. I think it's around 40%. We do 10% because what we figured out is that our customer is a migrant who's already connected with other migrants. So if you do a good job with the first migrant, network effects would come into play. They
Hmm.
would talk to their friends and they would give recommendations. And we've already seen that at least 70% of people who reach out to us, they don't reach out to us through advertising. They reach out to us through a referral. They come to us and say, "Oh, my friend came to you and you did this for him. Can you connect me with a vendor for this other service?" So I think our business model, of course, advertising is important, but we look at holistically, advertising would be a subset of marketing. For us, in terms of marketing, we want to focus more on community outreach and less on advertising. That's the approach we're taking at this point. But in terms of marketing, I mean, we were very active in terms of community outreach with migrants from Pakistan in the Middle East. The good thing is everything is virtual these days, so we can reach out to them. We can explain to them what we do. And then what happens is that what we've seen so far is that they basically become our advocates and pass along the message to their friends and family members who also live abroad.
And I'm sure you used your WhatsApp app to launch your business and tell everyone, hey, it's finally launched and we're open. Our doors are open, right?
Yeah, so we said to ourselves that let's start off with WhatsApp. That's where the migrants are.
Yeah.
And once we started seeing a lot of demand, we started building a product. So our product actually at this point it's in beta mode with test users, and we're actually about to launch it for migrant customers from Pakistan first, and then we will take it across to all South Asian migrants who would like to use the service to get things done in their home countries. So the product is almost ready. We're very excited about it. It's
Mhm.
about to get out in the market.
I love it. And I love how you took the approach to do some market research to ask, hey, is there a need for this service? Because many times we see startups that start with absolutely no market research and they launch a product and it just goes down the drain because no one's looking for it. No one needs that product or service. So I absolutely love the very, very smart approach that you took and you put it out there and you got 500 over 500 messages and you're like bingo, this is it. So that is awesome. I love it. So, Yasser, how do you reinvest in yourself to keep up to date with your industry? So, do you read books? Are you plugged into any conferences? What types of things do you do on a daily basis to just keep your mind sharp and creative?
Recently, I've been focusing a lot on reading about regulatory requirements because the business that we are getting into, it's a payments business. We need to understand regulatory environments around different countries. The good thing is so far, it all makes sense. It syncs with what we are doing. But generally, I like to read as much as I can. Everything, books, news, current affairs about the economy, whatever I can. I try to read as much as I can to keep up to date with what's happening in the marketplace, not just from our business perspective, but generally as well. Because at the end of the day, the business that we're getting into, InstaKin, there is a very strong social element to it. So a lot of social issues can suddenly become very relevant for us. But even otherwise, I just like to read. So I find it very easy to make an effort to read as much as I can about not just business, but generally about current affairs, social topics, generally the news to keep myself up to date.
And I always, always hone in on how reading is just so, so powerful. And I get immigrant entrepreneurs on my show all the time that say, I read anything and everything I can get my hands on. So I think there's something so special about reading books and keeping up to date to keep the mind creative and sharp and powerful. So instead of wasting our time on social medias and following other people, hey, pick up a book, start incorporating some of these news channels and start reading on a daily basis. And that is how we are always up to speed in our industry, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I believe that it makes a lot of difference in your approach towards not just business, but generally as well, just in life. So I think reading is important. I wish I could read more than what I do right now,
Yeah,
but
me too.
I have to sometimes prioritize work over reading.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so difficult because there's so much that we want to learn and read, but there's just not enough hours in the days. so
Right, right.
so Yasser, I wanted to switch gears and I wanted to talk about like not a fun topic. So I wanted to talk about mistakes or failures. And I know that there's always a story behind the mistakes that we make, but there's always a learning process that we can share. People do not make the same mistake. So are there any mistakes or failures you wanted to touch on where you implemented a new strategy or a positive strategy to make it work out for you?
Two things. If someone is a migrant and an entrepreneur, chances are you're going to make a lot of mistakes. I would say they're not really mistakes. Your maybe risk appetite is higher than other people. So you will be able to try out many different things, which perhaps others would not. And in that process, you're going to make a lot of mistakes. But in my opinion, you don't have to look at mistakes as failure. But like you said, they're more of learning opportunities.
Mhm.
And we literally do it on a daily basis. I mean, anyone who's worked at a startup will tell you that things go wrong every day and then you fix them every day. I think the most important thing here is I always say this in terms of experiences, failures, mistakes is perseverance. I mean, you have to be able to persevere and immigrants are known for this trait. I mean, if you think about it, this is what we do. I mean, I know so many people who left their country of origin to come to or to move to the US or to Germany or to the UK with nothing. The only thing that they had was they were able to persevere, they were able to be innovative, they were able to think about new ways of creating value. Everything at the end of the day goes down to value creation. So from our perspective, I mean, very frankly, the first time I just mentioned that I started that software business in Pakistan and I quickly realized that it's not going to work. I think that's the thing. You have to make decisions. I think failures or mistakes are more about decisions. Sometimes people are afraid of making decisions even when they know that they're not on the right track and they just let it linger on. I think one should make a lot of decisions. So in my case, when I started that software business, I knew it's not going to go anywhere because if you can't find the right people to work in teams with you on it and there is very little demand in the local market, then you have to move on.
Mhm.
Then in terms of even InstaKin or my news website, we make mistakes all the time. But like you said, the outcome of a mistake should be the ability to learn from it and minimize the chances that you would make the same mistake a second time.
Mhm.
So that's the philosophy we follow. But as businesses, as innovative startups, yeah, we make mistakes all the time. It's part and parcel of this equation.
Right. And I don't know about you, but I always love asking people about mistakes and failures that they have gone through because, for one, like you said, this is part of our journey. So just because we made a mistake or one of our businesses failed, there's so many different things that we can take from that, learn from it, and create new things, create new positive outcomes, and continue with that perseverance, continue with that drive. And there's always success on the other side. So I love talking about this very touchy and kind of in a negative way, but there's always a positive thing that we can take from it, learn from it, keep on going, and to see us thrive. So,
If you think about it, one of the good things that you'll find in America is appetite for risk. And if you think about it, if you look at new businesses opening up in the US, whether they're on the tech side or they're just small businesses, you'll see a high percentage of them being started by immigrants. So there, you will find some level of correlation between risk and immigrants. And then you will also see that a lot of immigrants, even if the first business fails, they have the risk appetite and I would say the perseverance to get into a second business. They don't give up. And that's part of an immigrant's journey. You just can't give up. Secondly, what's the worst that can happen? You will fail. That's okay. You fail with one business, you will learn enough to do something else with it that would create value on its own. I always heard this from people that they always question how someone became an overnight success. And I've read so many quotes about it. But then I actually met a person who told me the same story, how he became an overnight success after 12 years of hard work,
Yes.
12 years of failure. So I think you will find a lot of stories like these amongst the migrant community as well. It makes total sense. Migrants have a high risk appetite. They have a high opportunity cost, leaving so many things behind to start something new over here. So for them, mistakes are not failure.
Mhm.
They're not related to failure. They're more of a learning, a journey
Mhm.
where they can learn from it and they can move on to the next big thing.
Hey, leaving your country, leaving your family behind and coming to America is a huge risk on its own. If you
Exactly,
made it here,
exactly,
you can do anything.
absolutely.
Okay, so Yasser, what's next for you? What are some business goals for the next couple of years, and what is InstaKin up to?
So as of now, the focus is completely on InstaKin to scale it up. We're already exceeding all of the milestones that we had set up for the business. We are very happy with the traction that's coming in, with the feedback that's coming in. So InstaKin is priority number one. And the next goal is to take this solution from just one country to all of South Asia. So that's high priority. That's what we want to do as soon as possible now.
I love it. I love your milestones being accomplished. Congratulations. And I
Thank you.
cannot wait to hear all of the positive success stories that are going to come out of InstaKin in the near future. So you're going to have to keep me updated.
Definitely, definitely we will.
Yeah. So, what does the American dream mean to you, Yasser?
So I think for most migrants, it's not just about their American dream, it's about the dream, I would say, where the American part is a big facilitator because this is the place where there are a lot of opportunities. This is a great place to get started. If you think about it, some of the greatest companies in the world were started in the US and not anywhere else. We have so many examples even today. And I think that has to do with the fact that in America, mistakes are not looked down upon. They're to be learning experiences. If you talk to a lot of people in Europe, you'll find a very different interpretation of failure and mistakes, but that has to do with the culture. So in terms of the American dream, I think the most important thing from my perspective is the ability of this place, this country to absorb people from all over the world and then give them an opportunity to do whatever they want to. If they do well, good. If they don't do well, they can start over again. From my perspective right now, I want to make sure that we take InstaKin to the next level, make it a global brand, put it in front of migrants globally. If you think about it, immigration is like, or migrants are like healthcare in America. They're totally underserved. We hear a lot about them, but we don't see a lot of solutions around them. We talk about immigration, migrants all the time. We talk about healthcare in this country all the time, but you don't really see anything concrete coming out. So from my perspective, this is a place where we can make a difference for migrant communities, give them something that will be impactful for them and for us. It would not just be a commercial venture, but it would be a venture that would create a lot of value for everyone. So, in a nutshell, that's the dream that I'm going after at this point.
Great dreams and great goals. So, what are some things you would advise the next aspiring immigrant that wants to start their own business?
I mean, I would say just do it.
Mhm.
Again, what's the worst that can happen? It won't work. That's all right. You can start over again. I would rather have myself or someone else try something and not succeed at it versus not try at all. So I think a big part of if a migrant wants to create value and they want to do it by starting a business, be an entrepreneur, I think the steps are, like I said, always validate the solution and then get into it. But other than that, don't overthink it. I feel sometimes we can overthink some topics. Don't do that. Just do it. And then as long as you're concrete, you're specific, you have some goals set, you have some milestones set, you will start seeing value coming out of it.
And I see you guys offer legal services through InstaKin. Do you guys provide legal services for entrepreneurs who want to start their business as an immigrant?
Not right now,
No? Okay.
but this is something that's on the radar.
Okay.
right now, the legal services that we provide are more around, let's say, if you live in the Middle East and you require some type of legal work back home, civil legal work, we can connect you with a law firm that can get it done for you. But what you mentioned is something that is on the horizon. That is something that we want to do in the future.
Got it. Yeah, I'm going to absolutely love that idea when you guys implement it. And everyone listening as an immigrant are absolutely going to check out your page, instakin.com. And hey, Yasir, I wanted to thank you so much for coming on the show. And I love ending this with your phrase, just do it. All immigrants listening are going to be so impactful with your story, your journey, and especially the fact that your company is completely related to all the immigrants. So I love your mission, your vision, and your journey. So thank you so much. And I hope to stay connected.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Alina. Appreciate it.
Alrighty, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. If there are any links that were mentioned in this episode, make sure to check them out on my website under this episode to find all the links conveniently located in the show notes. I just wanted to ask for a quick favor if you could please leave a review wherever you're at listening to this podcast. Also, if you're an immigrant entrepreneur and would love to be on my podcast, please email me and we'll get connected. I'll see you guys all next time for another exciting and impactful episode. Take care.